I wanted to make a video about the button pass style of home that I'm building here. This is a skip style button pass, Log Home Builders Association or LHBA method of building a house. So I get a lot of, I seem to get a lot of either hate or disbelief on the fact that LHBA home doesn't settle. And I want to explain why. And I've got lots of friends in the LHBA members group. They've lived in their houses for 30 years and never experienced any settling. And I want to talk about why. And this is my theory based on some stuff I learned in the class. And before I went to the class, this was the one question I couldn't find an answer to online. So I think it'd be helpful for other people if they saw the reason why an LHBA house doesn't settle. So if you notice, I don't know if you can see, you should be able to, there's a rebar every 2 feet on every log. And then, so on one row it's there, if you go up a row, it's offset by a foot. So every 2 feet on every row, you drive a 1/2 inch rebar spike into the log. Here's actually here's the top of one right here that goes all the way down through this log, and it goes halfway into the log below it. Okay, this piece that you can see here actually starts at the top of the next log. So you can see, you know, it starts in this log, goes all the way through, halfway into the log below. And that little nub that you see sticking out goes all the way through this log and halfway into this log below. Okay, so you do that on every row. Of course, these are butts. These two are butts. The ones above them are tips. Butts, tips, butts, tips. And the reason why it's called a button pass is because this log butts up against that log, and that log passes. On the next row, instead of stopping, you can see this one passes, and you can't see the log, but it's on the inside, it butts. And then again, we repeat the pattern. So it butts, pass, button, pass. So that's why it's called button pass. And it's a great way to build. And for me, the number one reason why is because it doesn't settle. And the reason why it doesn't settle is because the rebar is driven into the log, and all logs shrink. Every log home, the logs shrink. The difference between a button pass home and other styles of log homes is that this log does not sit, I mean, it sits on this log, but it's held in place with rebar. So when the log shrinks, it's going to shrink around that rebar, and it's going to grab onto it. The rebar doesn't move. So in this log, it's not going to move. So this log will squeeze around that rebar and hold really tight. While I was building, I stuck a rebar in the wrong place. I tried to pull it out. It was only in like maybe 2 inches, and I couldn't pull it out. I just had to get out my cut-off wheel and just cut it off. So it gets in there tight, super tight, and it doesn't move. So when the logs settle in a LHBA home, they settle towards their center, they shrink. So other log home companies call that settling. Well, this isn't going to settle because that rebar is holding onto it tight. So when the logs shrink, they grab onto that rebar. So what does that do to an LHBA home when the logs shrink? It makes your chinking separate just a little bit. So the first year, or before you move in, you chink everything. Then you move in, and then the next year, the logs pretty much have done settling. They'll settle a little more, but they're not going to settle down on top of each other. They're going to shrink towards their center. So every row of chink is going to open up gaps. And so you just go back and chink a second time with a little bit thinner mixture, and that's it, you're done. There's no more, there's no need to worry about keyholes over doors. There's no need for spaces. There's no need for jacks to keep the roof in line with the house. There's nothing like that. You put the logs together, you cut your door frames exactly how you want. You give yourself maybe a 1/2 inch clearance just for your own sanity, 1 inch clearance, whatever, doesn't matter. But you don't need a special gap over the doors, and you don't need special gaps over the windows. You don't need screw jacks. You don't need special anything, engineering, for the roof or anything else. And that's one of the great secrets of an LHBA home, and that's why I decided to go with them instead of any other method.